I'm Bleeding Critic. Welcome to Scary Stories UK. Doxy Proxy. It wasn't the fact that Simon had been laid off after 25 years of loyalty and back-breaking work. It was because sometimes evil takes a slow, innocuous approach. He'd sat on the opposite side of the desk, subdued and silent, as his boss gave him excuses. Simon, it's the economy. I've been looking at the quarterly reports and we got to downsize. It's not you, Simon. We hope you understand. Calmly disassociated, Simon stared just beyond his boss's head at a fly on the wall. As he continued to stare, his boss's insincerely generic monologue ended. Again, I am so sorry and I hope you understand. It's just the nature of the beast. After collecting his things, he returned home to lock himself in his apartment for 5 days. After 5 days, he had called his boss and begged for his job back for as long as his ex-boss would listen. There was an abrupt response. Simon, I am sorry, there is nothing I can do. That said, your last payment has been... And suddenly Simon couldn't hear over the sound of an insect buzzing. His nerves began to vibrate and hum with anxiety as he stared at the bottle of antipsychotics sitting on the small stained table in front of him. He tried to remember if he had taken them today, but couldn't think over the sound of the fly that constantly encircled the room. After about a week, he resigned to not thinking about it at all. The possible and possibly horrific come-down seemed bearable in light of losing his career. For almost 30 years, Simon dedicated his time and loyalty to his job. So much so that 10 years into his career, his wife left him, taking with her their only child because she did not get enough attention. Long hours often exhausted him, leaving him unable to emotionally and physically keep the relationship alive. For the last 15 years, he toiled alone and deep in his work. A stand-up employee, never late, always making deadlines and never overly social. The relentless work hours made it all but impossible to keep up consistent contact with his child as he would have liked. But he was left with little energy to do much about it. His career had finally taken everything from him, all except his office things and the fly that followed him home. After the separation, the apartment he had moved into was suitable for a single man. A single flat, cheap, with no more than a kitchenette, compact bathroom, shared living space, with day seating and barely any room left for a single bed, and the alarm clock radio he had woke up to day after day. The loud, repetitive buzz from the alarm never bugged him, yet the fly that followed him home was maddening. That single fly kept him awake with little to no rest night after night. So instead of sleeping, he began tracking the unbearable insectoid sound around the room. But he could never seem to locate it. Later, he would be conscious from time to time without knowing how he got from A to B, and yet the fly remained. Eventually, Simon sat as still as he could, waiting for the buzz to come near. After what seemed like days, the fly sat still before him on top of the bottle of pills long forgotten. Simon went to swat the fly to finally rid himself of his insanity, but found he could only look at it smugly as it cleaned itself in triumph. He doesn't know how much longer he remained glaring at that damned fly. It was still, but the noise remained insurmountable. Simon was surprised to notice the door to his small place open in his peripheral. 2 men walked in, investigating reports of disturbing noises throughout several nights past. A young investigator, first to walk in, vomited upon entry. His senior took lead to find Simon in an upright sitting position. Post-mortem, Simon seemed to have had an infection due to the numerous insect bites that swelled nauseatingly along his arms, neck and head. Emerging from the swollen wounds were maggots that had made their way out and trailed up to his head, where they had grown fat on skin and face. A new generation of flies comfortably lazed about in and out the nose and slack-jawed mouth. There was a steady halo of flies circling the head. Simon's decomposing and soiled body had been sitting there for so long. Next to him on the floor in a horribly stained box was the contents of an office cubicle containing a stapler, paper cutter, scattered paper clips and a shattered glass of an empty picture frame caked with blood. Behind Simon, back to back, another figure sat on a chair. The investigators slowly came around to face the second figure. Such a brutally mangled body, it was hard to discern whether it had been male or female. The head had been entirely scalped, and the skin on face peeled back to frame a picture of a once happy family. The lips had been mercilessly stapled shut, and the picture had been pinned into eye sockets with paper clips that were uncoiled. There was a dark hollowed-out crevice where the genitalia was replaced by a wire mesh pen holder. The identifying pieces rested on the ground, along with the eyes, neatly between a pair of business shoes still on the feet. Later autopsy would show that Simon's boss died of shock after the skinning took place, but not quite in time before mutilation of his genitals had begun. At the end of each tied down arm, each finger had been unceremoniously hacked off and replaced with a number 2 pencil. The upper abdomen unleashed the length of intestine, the length of which ended into a paper shredder. Sticky notes and personal stationery were pinned all over the torso, and at the centre of which was Simon's last paycheck. As both bodies were bagged and the last of light was zipped up over Simon's eyes, a single fly escaped, searching for another wall to land on.